I have to take my glasses off so I don't have a glare. Welcome to this edition of the Peanut Gallery, and my guests tonight are IHSAA officials Mike Fuquay and Brian Willie Elliott. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll just start out by you guys kind of introducing yourself, which part of the state you're from, and what sports you're involved in, and we'll go from there. Mike, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, Michael Fuquay, and I'm from Gas City, I primarily do basketball. I've done volleyball and baseball in the past, but really focus on basketball as of the last 5 years here, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Brian?
Brian Elliott. I'm from Hartford City. I work football, basketball, and baseball, and been at it, basketball and baseball 20 years, and football about 14.
Okay, and Brian at one point worked on the top-ranked football crew in the state of Indiana. I know that for a fact. I was a part of that. So
yeah, we first got started.
Yeah, we had some pretty big games. I remember working up at Fort Wayne Dwinger in the tournament, and that was usually where we always got sent. The tournament actually was up to Fort Wayne.
Yep.
So, Mike, do you have a certain place that you get sent, it seems like, consistently for tournaments?
It's been north quite a bit as of late, up in the Fort Wayne area, and there for a while. I was going to Southern Wells for quite a while. The Raider Dome, and, which is a fun place to work, excellent place to work. Actually, my first boys sectional-wise, 3 of the first 4 years were at the Raider Dome for me. So,
oh my gosh! Well, I think the biggest shocker, and I'm going to speak for Brian here, and he can correct me. We actually got sent to Delta one year for a football tournament, and we had a Delta grad on our crew, and he had put, there's a place on there you can say, probably shouldn't send us here or wherever. So we were a little bit shocked that we were there, and then plus, Ozzie Mann was quarterbacking, who, his family was from Blackford and still lived in Hartford City at the time. And there were Brian and I. And so it was kind of interesting. Brian, was that the biggest surprise that you've had as far as how close they've sent us to home?
Yeah. That was a surprise to us. But then when we told our white hat, it really surprised him.
Yeah.
If you remember, he said, "You got to be kidding me." So, yeah, that was a surprise.
We're going to start off talking about what just has happened the past few months. We've dealt with the COVID-19. I know you both worked basketball sectionals. I was a PA announcer at basketball sectional. Really a lot of excitement. I know especially for me, I was at Blackford announcing that sectional. And it was the first time Blackford had won the sectional at home since I was a sophomore in high school. And I was on the bench that year when we ended up winning the sectional that year. So it had been quite a while. I'm not going to get into the years there. I don't want to make myself give my age out too quick. But it had been a long time. And then I think the last time they didn't win a sectional was in '91 when my sister was in school. So Mike, why don't you talk about where you were at for the basketball sectional and how COVID-19 hit you as far as advancement?
Yeah. Was at Huntington North for the sectional. Had a great time there, Huntington North. Great venue, and then was going to transfer to go to Greenfield Central for the regional championship. Going to be in the evening that night, and just got word again Thursday or Friday, I think it was. We were still on, and we were going to go with limited crowd and just with which I was trying to work in my mind what that was going to be like, a big game, regional championship game, and here we are, and probably only third full, and just what that was going to be like. Trying to work in my mind how to be prepared for that, and that's just a little different atmosphere than what we're used to when you get to that point. But then we got the word that it was going to be canceled there. So in hopes to keep playing, but it just never worked out.
Now, were you and your crew willing? You guys were going to be able to go and do it, because I know, talking to Commissioner Paul Neidig earlier this week, he said he actually had some crews call and say, "Hey, we don't want to do this." You guys were okay with going through the regional?
Yes. Yeah. To my knowledge, none at our site, because I know he mentioned also that some of the sites were, weren't able to, they had to move some of the sites. But at our site, to my knowledge, none of the officials or the school, we were hoping to go.
Okay. And Brian, you also worked a sectional, and then why don't you talk a little bit about, this is probably the first spring as a baseball umpire that you've had off.
Yeah, Chris, I was fortunate to have a basketball sectional up at Caston, 1A school, but in the gymnasium, all 6 teams just packed the gym Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. What a great atmosphere. What a great gymnasium. I really had a lot of fun. Baseball, I was looking forward to it this year because I had some pretty good games. I had some pretty good teams that I was going to, be able to umpire. And, just when they said that basketball was canceling, I figured, the spring sports was done too. And so that was 2 months of just kind of sit around the house and, wondering what was going to happen.
You had a daughter that plays softball too. How did she handle not getting to play?
Uh, she took it in stride. She really didn't say much about it.
Yeah, I think it was hard.
They were just coming off of being the state runner-up last year, and they were expecting to make another run. They had 3 good seniors, good leaders, and the junior class was, good ball players. So they were looking forward to the season. So it was kind of a bummer for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know, having a daughter that's a senior, a lot of things that we've dealt with this spring, and we still don't graduate for another month. So totally understandable as everybody tries to adjust to everything that's going on right now. Being officials, and you guys have both done this for a while, and they keep trying to find ways to get more people involved in officiating, younger people, offering free licenses for the first year and so on. Number one, why do you think they're having a shortage of officials, and what would you tell somebody that's thinking about trying to get their license?
Chris, I think one of the things that makes it tough, you've seen the attacks on officials. Just the berating, and just how I think we see a lot of that on TV. We see a lot more of it, and even just the conduct on that, just how people present themselves and all that. Even though I think the IHSA has done a good job at really reining in sportsmanship points and really trying to emphasize the sportsmanship, it's still, I think that plays a big role in why people, it's like, I don't want to step out there and go in that atmosphere and be berated like that and be called things. And so I think that has a big part of it for people.
Brian?
I totally agree with Mike. It is kind of tough, and if you've got to have a strong background or a backbone to do what we do. You got to take the criticism with the good, and I just don't know if kids want to do that. So,
And one of the things, and you probably remember this, Dave Montgomery was one of them that brought me up as far as football officiating, and then J.D. Collins did a lot with me with basketball. They tell you not to have rabbit ears. And I think that's probably more important today than it ever has been, because people don't hold back. I mean, I thought it was bad when I used to go with my dad, which has been 35, 40 years ago, when I would go with him when he was officiating, and it was nothing then like it is nowadays. How important it is, do you think, for the coach, regardless of the sport? Often, I think, from what I've seen, their behavior kind of dictates what else happens, because if they're going crazy and yelling and screaming, it kind of gives the fans the green light, and it kind of gives the kids the okay to lose their focus off the game and go ahead and get involved in that as well. Do you agree with that? And how do you think they can step up and kind of help in that situation?
I absolutely agree with that, Chris. It's an old adage that I remember hearing. It's the circle of criticism, circle of praise, and it starts with that coach. And I think that is a pivotal person. If we can, the coaches, how they conduct themselves, and for us, I mean, that's how we are handling the coaches as well. And that's one of the things that I have appreciated about refereeing, how it has taught me over the years of resolving conflict and conflict resolution, and how important that is to really, because we're out there for the same purpose. It's the kids. I love just the mentorship that those coaches and that they have with those boys or girls, and just we're on the same team, really. The mentorship, the educators, and just really trying to come alongside these kids, and we're for the kids. All of us are, and that's the primary thing. And so if we can just kind of come in that unified force and remember that, I think that can help all of us and help the fans see that. And I know we're going to disagree. I know we're going to have times where we disagree, and that's okay.
Yep. Well, Brian, who are some of the people that have helped bring you along over the years, and some lessons and some things that you've learned as you've experienced so many years of officiating in Indiana?
Football wise, it was, like you said, Dave Montgomery, Max Bennett, two great guys that they would come right out on the field. And, this is a fact that they would tell us, and then if we would ride with them to do a lower level game, they would quiz us, and, that meant so much to us, and, kind of got us thinking, and so baseball, it would probably be Bob Plummer and Tom Newswander, both great umpires, both worked the state, just they'd give you little tidbits of what to do, how to, where to go in certain plays and stuff. And so, yeah, them are all gentlemen that, have really helped me on my way.
And Mike, who's influenced you and mentored you along the way?
Ooh, there has been a lot of them. Really, there has. I know if I start mentioning names, I'll miss several. But I remember going to meetings, MVOA, Mississinawa Valley Officials Association, and Brian can attest to this, that because Brian and I work a lot together, and now in basketball, and boy, the guys were incredible. Man, there was 30 or 40 of them, and they would just we would soak it in. I mean, they would give us so much wisdom, and then take us out on the court and do a lower level game. And man, that was just so valuable. So there was countless amount of guys that have just come alongside and helped over the years. Man, it's just, and giving back. And that's what we try to do, try to do the same thing. Just remembering that at meetings and trying to come alongside guys that are just starting out, like you asked earlier, and just really, you got to start somewhere.
Yep. I know one of the things we were always taught was remember, no matter what level that you're working at, that was those kids' Friday night.
There you go.
And I
Yeah.
never have forgot that. And
Great.
sitting at some games and listening to people and some comments that are made, it does get hard because, if you know this, officials have to be colorblind. You don't see the colors of uniforms.
Right.
You aren't out there, and people get accused of, oh, you're cheating for them and this kind of thing. People do miss calls. I don't think it's ever done on purpose. Have you ever been in a, what are some of the situations you've been that might have been uncomfortable that, that you tried to get through or tried to help somebody else through for that matter?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's J.D. Collins had said this before, the art of reset. Just the idea that, you mentioned it, we're going to miss calls. And the average is 1.5 to 2 calls per game per official. So that's almost 6 calls a game that we're gonna miss at times. And just knowing that, putting in perspective that, we're not perfect and we're gonna make mistakes. And along the way, just that art of reset, being able to reset ourselves and move on to the next play. I got to keep telling myself, go to the next play, go to the next play. Because, man, in some heated moments, a travel, you miss a tip or something like that. We've been in games where, we've come together and try to do the best we can, again, to get the right call. And but that art of reset is really important in our minds and helping the coach. Now, that's a different story sometimes to help the art of reset in a coach, but but it's interesting at times, but harder to convince him to go to the next play.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Brian?
Well, I think I don't think any official tries to miss calls, but like you said, we're human, and we are the first people to realize when we have made a mistake, and so we got to just forget it and not be afraid to say, Coach, I blew that one. And usually, what do they say? Okay, don't let it happen again. But
yeah.
A good example of this is, Brian, you remember this. It's a game we had. And we're coming out. We're in the fourth quarter, big game, tie game, or pretty close contested game. And we are acknowledging to one another as officials that, hey, they're out of timeouts. And I'm nodding my head, yep, Brian, they're out of timeouts. Well, a turnover happened, or no, a bucket went in, and the ball was out of bounds, and I thought I heard the coach yell timeout. I blow my whistle. Big oops, because now we've got to, we've stopped play, and they are supposed to take it out. The count's already on, and that coach is out of bounds, or that coach was out of timeouts. And it was a mistake that I made. And I told the opposing coach, it's my bad, and we just had to go on. But I remember that one. That's probably the freshest one on my mind. You remember that, Brian?
Yeah, I remember it. But them things happen. I mean, and we're the first ones that feel bad about them.
And own it.
So.
Yeah. Well, we had a situation in football. I remember a game that Bobby Cox was actually at, where football was a kickoff, I believe, and a team that was the receiving team touched the ball, but they didn't have possession of it. Bounced in the end zone, and the other team came down and pounced on it, and I gave them a touchdown. I signaled touchdown. I don't remember now whether we talked about it or not. Brian might remember that or whatever, but I think we kept the touchdown on the board. It didn't affect the outcome of the game, but I did go to the other coach after the game and tell him I blew it. And that wasn't easy, but I thought, maybe he'll respect me more for telling him I missed it than him to look at the film and go, now, wait a minute. So, and those aren't easy things to do, but, like you said, everybody's human. You make mistakes, and even when there's 5 of you out there, still mistakes happen. What are some of the best games you've seen, some of the best athletes you've seen, regardless of sport? I know that's a tough one. There's a lot of games to think about there, but just, I'm sure you have a couple games that might stand out in your head. I think everybody has a couple that you always remember for good reasons. Let's go for good reasons.
Chris, when Jalon Smith was at Fort Wayne Lures, somehow our crew had him 3 times.
Oh, jeez.
We had him the first game of the season at Snyder, and then we had him the last game at Lures against Dwinger, and then we had first game of the sectional at Woodland, Lures Woodland. But that young man was a class act, a good athlete. I mean, very respectful, never had no issues with him. And, now look where he's at. He went to Notre Dame. Now, then he's with the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys now. That was probably, in football, that's probably the one athlete that, I really watched and, had a lot of respect for.
Mike?
Ooh. Pick one. I know. Being that I've done it for 21 years nearly, I tell you some of the fondest memories I had, maybe because less intense and less pressure, maybe, is the opportunity to do an all-star game. Whether it be junior all-stars or the Kentucky Indiana junior game. Just the talent on that court was incredible. About 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to do that, and just still have just the brochures. And you do that. You do things like that as officials. You keep. That's one of the things I like to do is keep all the programs and things, games like you're asking, Chris. Just kids that have gone through and like, man, I even sitting with my son and telling him, I've officiated him over the years, whether it be Zach Randolph or, we can name a bunch of them, but it's just cool to have been on the court with some high caliber athletes in those situations.
What was it like? I ran into you last year at Bankers Life doing the state finals. What was that experience like for you?
Very humbling and very honoring to be able to do that. It was an excellent game. Got to work with an excellent crew, but yeah, it was. And it's your goal always is to get to the top. I mean, who doesn't want to get to the top game but I had to pinch myself. Tell you the truth, Chris, it was just it was an awesome experience, and just being able to, and I tell you, it helped me tremendously over the years is I got to sit a few before I worked. So that was actually helpful, kind of be behind the scenes and kind of how it all works and kind of get all the nerves a little bit worked out. It's a little different stepping on the court, being responsible for the calls that you make, but it was just an absolute honor. And the people that your question earlier, the people that had helped me over the years, man, I had an opportunity to reach out to a lot of them and just to show them and remind them that I'm where I'm at because the work and the effort and the help that they've given me over the years.
Brian, one thing I'll ask you is, since you're involved in football and basketball, one of the things I always kind of felt like that the IHSAA needed to look at, in football, you have a crew, you work with the crew all year, and then you stay together as a crew in the tournament, and you know where each other are going to be, you know what's going to go on, the conversations. In basketball, how much do you think it would help? Because you said you work together a lot. I don't know whether you work with the same crew the whole year, because I don't know, it's always up to schools now they hire. But how much do you think that would help the officiating in basketball to keep the crews together, let them work together during the year like they do in football, and then keep them together in tournament? Or do you think that's a bad thing?
Chris, I'd like to see it that way, but I also like the opportunity to work and to get to know other guys, and it's just, I work with Michael and I work with Jeff, and our first few years, you'd call the AD and you would get games from them. Now we have an assigners that assign us games, and so we don't work as many games together. And so, that's a good thing that we're getting to work with other guys during the season. But yeah, I would like to, work as a crew, and, because you just, each other's where they're going to be, and, how they call a game. And, I think that's very important, to these kids in the schools.
Mike, do you think that would help with the flow, especially come tournament when you want to be at your best?
Well, I would, selfishly speaking, I would like to see it that way. Just see some, at least, I don't know if it's possible, but through sectional or something, start at the lowest level there. But under the current structure that we're in, based upon, how we are assigned certain places and not always with the people that we work with, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with other people, just because it prepares us for that. So Brian and I, and whether it be Jeff or Lynn or whoever else we're working with, we probably work, I'd say 70% of our games together, and the other 30, but I'm thankful for the 30 under our current structure. But again, boy, I think it would be awesome to be able to try to advance together, because again, that just knowing when you've worked together for so long, you just kind of get to know each other's, how we're calling the game and just where we're going to be and things like that. So
I think
positioning
it would definitely help that comfort level.
Yes.
I think. Definitely the one thing you don't want to do is be uncomfortable in a sectional championship, regional championship, and so on. Now, without mentioning any names, you guys have any crazy stories about coaches or guys that you did have to work with that you didn't know? And I'll even throw out there, I told you guys beforehand, worked with a guy that kept a whistle in his pocket, and he didn't do it when I was working with him, thank goodness, because I didn't want to have to be in that situation. But somebody in the crowd yelled, and he pulled out that extra whistle and tossed it to him in the crowd. And then one night that I was with a guy, he kind of antagonized, and I can say this because he came to Indiana out of state to work a game and got there late because of weather in the winter. So I had to start the game by myself, which was interesting. That's always interesting. I don't know whether you guys have ever had to do that, but it's not a fun thing. And then when he got there, the coach questioned one of his calls, and he came back with, well, coach, why'd you call that play? And the guy looked at him real weird. He goes, exactly. You worry about calling the plays, and I'll worry about making the calls. And it was like, oh, I could tell it was going to be a long night from that on out. Have you ever had anything that kind of threw you off happen like that? Hopefully not, but, it'd be a good story right now.
There's one game that comes to my mind, and I think Mike was on it with another official, and we drove to North Miami one night. Mike, you probably remember this, and they were bringing the ball down the court, and the coach, Basil Malmy, was halfway on the floor, and the other official was doing the count, and he almost ran right into Basil, and Basil said, give me a timeout. And the other official said, well, Basil, you can't be out here. And so he gave him a timeout, but he almost ran him over too. So that was kind of interesting, that situation there.
I do remember that, Brian. Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question. The one thing that I've seen happening more and more is it seems like, the coach's box has changed several times, different areas they can be in, different places they can be in. But it seems like they're sneaking out on the court a little bit more and more. And when I hear people yell that around me and I'm at a game, I'll tell them, if a player or a coach or an official runs into them, then they're going to get caught and we're going to have a problem. Have you guys kind of noticed that that's becoming more of an issue?
Chris, I think the IHSA has done a good job with sportsmanship. And, I think like we talked to them in the coaches meeting, hey, if you're out on the floor coaching your kids, we're going to ask you, hey, get back, or if you're going all the way down to the baseline, that's good, and coaching, that's fine, as long as you're coaching. But if you start coaching us, then we're going to, move you back. And, you've been at a lot of schools. There's some of them that them benches, which they use chairs, are right on the court. So there's not a whole lot of room. But, that's the way hey, coach, help me out. Step back, Oh, okay, I'm sorry. But then if he starts coaching me, then I have to, hey, no more. So.
Right. Mike, have you had any situations like that? Have you ran into a coach at some point?
Yeah. I personally, I like that. I like the new rule where they go all the way to the baseline. Again, as long as they're not coming down to the baseline and really letting us have it. But I do like that rule. It kind of gives them that length there versus coming out onto the floor. But yeah, sometimes, like Brian said, even in sectional wise, we had to ask or request that they take that first row of benches so the chairs could be scoot back so they can walk that, and have a little bit of space there to do what they want to do there. But yeah, I have a technique sometimes that I'll be going in C position and coming down the court and bump into the coach. It might be accidental, but say, hey, whoa, coach, what are you doing? And he'll look down. Oh my goodness. And that kind of resolves it sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm on the court. And so just help, like Brian said, help us out, man. Stay off. We're going to be coming through here a lot tonight. So
you're going to have get back coaches in basketball like they do in football before it's over. What are some of the biggest crowds you've officiated in front? And has there ever been a place you've went that you've felt intimidated just walking out? Because I know I did my very first game ever was at Newcastle, for crying out loud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, what a place to work there. Brian and I, JV wise, we would early on, we'd try to get to Newcastle and just experience that atmosphere and all that. That was always some of our highlights to work there in Newcastle. But one of our top games, Brian, you remember this game too, and I'm sure
yeah.
I'll say this, just about 2 or 3 years ago, it was Fort Wayne Carroll versus Homestead, and it was at Homestead, and we show up before halftime of the JV game, just at about the end of the first quarter, and they have signs on the door saying sold out. And it was an atmosphere that was just electric. The band, of course, Homestead's band is amazing and just filled up a big portion of that one side of the stands. But that was and it came down to a last-second shot, which Brian had, 3-pointer, good, and it was just an awesome game.
That's great. Brian, any games that stick out to you? You've got several sports to pick from there.
That one there topped them all. I mean, it was standing room only, and I think that was the first time that I had ever been at Homestead. And I mean, it was just, the atmosphere was electric. I mean, I'm almost thinking that it might have been for the SAC championship.
It was.
But yeah, a young man hit a 3-pointer, and I come across and I whacked it, and out the door we went, man. It was crazy. I mean, it was just like a sectional championship. I mean, people ran on the court, and we had one guy, he's directing us to go to a door, but that game there, I'll always remember that one.
Well,
But,
and
like I said, Newcastle's always, been a great place for us to work.
one of the things that made that a good game too is, Chris, it was like we were camouflaged. I mean, the players played, coaches coached, and we simply officiated, didn't get in the way. And that's what just made it so much fun too, is it was just the flow of the game and everything. And then to end that way, wow. I mean, it was one of those proud moments that you just go, man, I'm glad I was a part of that.
Yeah. I know one thing too is regardless of score, you're supposed to officiate the game from the opening tip to the final buzzer the same way. And a lot of people don't, a lot of the fans don't understand that. Oh, they're up by 25, give them a break, No, and you have to officiate the same all the way. Is that, I'm sure that's your attitude when you're doing it, but what would you tell fans to get them to understand that? I know your team's down by 25, but I've still got a job to do for another 12 minutes. Is that something you've ran across? Obviously, I'm sure you have in the years that you've worked.
Yeah. Just again, the importance of setting that tempo early. If that's part of our pregame. When we're in the locker room getting ready, how we set the tempo, and because that's how we're going to be the whole night. So set the tempo, get that illegal screens, get the 3 seconds, that kind of stuff. And if we can set that tempo early and know that, we're going to get those things, it won't be as much of a surprise in the fourth quarter, and it getting those hands and things like that. So the first 4 minutes of the game is critical, very important.
And Brian, talk a little bit about pregame because fans probably don't realize you guys don't just show up, go hang out for a few minutes, get dressed, and come out on the court. You guys have pre-games that you have to go through as well. And I know in football, ours always included talking about a couple rules specifically that maybe we dealt with the week before, or we just wanted to go over before a game. So, Brian, talk a little bit about your pregame.
Well, as you know, Mike and Jeff, we work together a lot, but Chris, we still have a pregame. We talk about, everything that we might face and, what we're going to do in certain situations, or we're going to get together when we have to get together and stuff. But the most important thing is to have a pregame, no matter if you've worked with the same officials a lot, or if you're starting to work with a new one, and so that's what I try to emphasize, hey, we're going to have a pregame, and I try to go over the basic things, and I'm pretty fortunate, that I work with the same football crew. I work with, the same basketball guys, and then 2 baseball umpires. I work a lot, probably 90% of the season, but Chris, we still have a pregame that we go through.
I'm going to ask you this, put you on the spot here. Is charging and blocking foul, is that the hardest call that you have to make?
That is a tough call, but when we our pregame is, let's be consistent. If you call it on one end and it happens down at the other, let's be consistent on both ends. And so that is a big thing that we talk about in pregame.
Mike, is that a hard call to differentiate? Is that the toughest one?
At times it can be, but for me, I think the hardest for me is a travel or a carry. Sometimes, because man, that's what's happening the most. I mean, they're moving their feet, they're dribbling the ball. You know what I mean? Those kind of things, those are hard to pick up, especially it's all in positioning, where we're positioning ourselves. And so that to me, yes, the block charge, it gets the most highlighted because it can be a tricky call. But again, remembering our primaries and just how we work as a team on the court, as officials, and having each other's back is really important, because once you've lived a what we call a blarge, which is a block and a charge. And I have lived one of those. So quite familiar with that. That's no fun.
Yeah. I had a question there and it slipped my mind again. What would you tell young officials? Obviously, they hear about all the bad things. That's what gets the press. They don't talk about the camaraderie that you have, the good games, which are the highest percent of what goes on. What would you tell somebody that's wanting to get into officiating? How would you
I
encourage them?
I would tell them to have thick skin and, you know, don't be in a hurry to move up, just to do lower levels, get with a veteran official, ask them to come out and watch them and tell them and help them, mentor them. And thing that I see a lot of basketball JV officials anymore, they come to the game, they do the game, and they're out the door. I would say, hey, stay around for a half, ask questions, that's the way. And, it's not that bad. I mean, just do your best, and that's what I would tell them.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it just knowing that you're not going to arrive early on. You gotta earn your stripes. You gotta earn your way, and just get that experience and be teachable. I think the best thing is teachable, moldable, be good listener. If anything, that's what officiating has done for me too, is helped me be a better listener, empathetic towards the coaches and the players, and just realizing that man, you just listen. If you're willing to listen and work hard and put the time in, you will advance. But like Brian alluded to there, that some they just want it to happen within the first 3 years, and you just gotta work your way and be patient, and all that work will pay off. And because I mean, even Brian and I at 20 something years, we're still learning. We're still learners. And the day we stop learning is the day we need to probably hang it up.
Are there any other lessons that either one of you have learned or gained from over the years that you would pass that knowledge on to help someone else get started?
Just be a good listener. Don't pop off. Listen to what the coach might have to say, and think about it, and then respond. I mean, that's probably what I've learned a lot of.
Yeah. Again, just the art of listening. I agree with Brian on that. The being empathetic towards the coaches and the players, and just again realizing we're out there for the same reason. And patience is another one that has helped me. Having a patient whistle and just being patient with the coaches and being patient with people is really important too. And then the whole idea of conflict resolution. I mean, you gotta, there's going to be conflict, and you just got to be able to manage it. And because game management is one of the key things we talk about pregame too. Isn't that right, Brian? That we have to just really manage the game, manage the people around us, and just do our very best.
One final thing, what advantages do you think a 3-man crew versus a 2-man crew has given officiating crews?
I'll start. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 3-man. Yeah. 3-person crews. I like it. I like it a lot. Early on, it was rough. I'll have to admit, you get in this same way of, our areas, our primary coverages, lines, we're calling in and out and all that. But man, it's just that extra set of eyes, and it's in chunking that court up even more, which involves more communication too with our partners, But and more opportunities for guys. Again, we're able to step out on that court with somebody that maybe is not as seasoned, and bring them along, and it gives that opportunity as well to be able to do that. And but I love 3-person crews. It's just opened up more opportunities and doors, and I think it's better for the game, better for us as officials too.
Brian?
I like 3-man, like Mike said. It gives you an opportunity maybe to work with a younger official and, let him experience. And, you have to close down. You have to work it like a 2-man, and don't be afraid to get down and, get your angles. But I like 3-man also. And, you have an area, but that doesn't mean that you don't help your partners. There's some guys that say, don't go fishing in my pond. Well, I think you have to watch the whole court because we want to get it right. We're working for the kids. And I always tell my partners, hey, if you see something in my area and if I'm straight lined or something, call it. Let's get the game right. The kids practice, they work hard for that Friday night. Let's get it right for them. So, yes, I like 3-man, and I think it's a good opportunity for younger officials that have paid their dues in the JV level to get an opportunity to work a few varsity games 3-man.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on, and I didn't have 3 blind mice as my background tonight, or I would have put that up there just for a fun little tiff. So I put the Twilight Zone instead, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw this Cardinal thing and had to go, oh man, what did I do? But my dad's a big Cardinal fan also, and he's had more to talk about than I have with my Reds the last few years. So it's just part of it. But anyway, I appreciate you guys coming on. I think officials don't always get the credit because they do have to keep control of things, and you have a lot to watch. And I'm sure sometimes you wish that there wasn't so much to pay attention to, so it'd make your job a little bit easier because you're supposed to watch the coach, you're supposed to watch the game. In football, we always had to watch the play after the play because you don't want something to happen out of bounds from, a collision or something. So a lot of responsibility. And you guys are part of the reason high school sports can go on. Everybody always wants to yell and spit out negative. Of course, they're not going to yell. Very seldom do I leave a gym and hear somebody say, boy, those referees were good, because it's usually, they always want to talk about the negative. But without you guys, the games wouldn't go on. And I know I appreciate you. I was part of that, fraternity there for a while. And it is a lot of work, and you do want to do things right. And you're right. It's all about the kids. I would say 99.9% of the time you're officiating kids in one sport or another that you probably don't even know, for the most part. And so you're there just to do your job, just like they are to do their job. So again, I appreciate what you guys do. I've worked with both of you in several capacities, and I've seen Brian take some hits on a football field. I thought he needed a helmet and some pads at times, but it was always a good time and always fun. And there's a lot more positive than there is negative, but just like with everything, you're going to hear about the negative more so. You guys have any final words to say, advice, whatever you want?
Chris, I sure appreciate you having us on. And, I saw a segment that you did earlier that you had the Reds hat on. So that's the reason I had the Cardinal background. But, I knew your dad was a Cardinal fan. But I just, we love the kids, and we love keeping them involved in the game. And, I missed baseball. And, the coaches, I feel like, are getting better with sportsmanship, and it's going down to the kids. Fans, I don't know. I've never had issues with fans. I mean, they're going to say what they want, but, not to ever worry about making it back to my car. But I think the IHSA has really promoted sportsmanship, and I think the coaches and have done a really good job, and I think the kids are following their lead. So,
Well, thank you, Brian. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. Chris, thank you for hearing our perspective and just doing what you're doing. I think it's great. I tune in and appreciate this as well, because you know what? We can all learn from one another, whether coaches, officials, all of us together. And it makes it a lot of fun. A lot of fun in the camaraderie that we can have, and I thank you for again this opportunity and just to chat and enjoy this. So good work. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure as much as the kids want to get back out on the fields and courts, you guys don't want to be missing that opportunity either. And I look forward to seeing you, and I'm sure I'll run into you at some sporting event. I know you guys don't do cross country, and that's where I'll be at most of my fall, probably watching my son run. But I think everybody's looking forward to get back out there and having some kind of normal sports activities going on. And I wish you both well. Wish you both health and safety as all this stuff starts back up. And just want to thank you again. And this is the Peanut Gallery signing off.